Good morning and welcome to the Sunday Coffee Edition. Joining as my co-host once again for some coffee is the future governor of Virginia, TK Eppley. This morning we're going to talk about how to pick the right employer. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
Good morning, TK. How's it going?
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Living the dream down here in South Carolina.
I noticed from the introduction, you always say the future governor of Virginia. The way it's going, I may be the future governor of Michigan.
Well, it's true. Could be. But I think Stoney would be disappointed if you got elected in Michigan before Virginia, just because he still lives in Virginia.
He's a strong kid. He'll figure it out.
Yeah. You might become the mayor of Ann Arbor.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah. So I was interviewing this new junior employer or employee, and I was kind of telling him, I said, look, giving him my philosophy, things like this, and what he had said is, it's pretty refreshing because I haven't really heard a lot of people that I've interviewed with talk about that. And I said, well, it's very important that you pick an employer that's not going to treat you like a number, that's not going to treat you just like another employee, but it's going to truly invest in you. And he goes, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, for me, it's quite simple. I want to invest in you to a point to where you are so highly marketable that you're getting job offers all the time, and that you choose to work with me, and that you'll never be a yes person. You're always going to tell me what you think because you're going to have the confidence in knowing that you can go anywhere. And I started thinking, I don't think a lot of employers do that. It is all about, let's crunch the numbers. How much can we squeeze out of every employee to get a little bit more out of them? Right. And I think eventually, this is why you really have the Great Resignation, and that too many employers have taken advantage of the majority of the people just being having a personality trait called agreeable. And so because they're so agreeable, they would just do that. I read another article about, I think it was a guy at a Subway or something along those lines, and he closed the store down early because he had already worked 60 hours that week, and too many people called off for the night shift, and he's like, I can't do anymore. And he got fired the next day.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, it's already hard enough to get people, especially to work in that kind of an industry right now. And then as an employer, you're trying to squeeze out another hour. Like, this cat's probably already salaried, and so he's working now 60 hours, and we negotiate a salary. To me, I was always taught, your salary is negotiated based on a 45-hour work week. Since you're salaried, you should expect to work 1 hour more a day.
Yeah.
No big deal. But 60 hours?
Yeah.
On a regular basis? Nope.
You ever hear Simon Sinek talk about this?
Yeah. I don't think so.
He was at a Four Seasons hotel, and he went to the coffee shop at the Four Seasons hotel, or at the coffee bar type of thing. And it was such a pleasant experience. He's a question asker by nature. He started asking him, he was funny. He was just a pleasant person or whatever. And what the kid told him, he says, I love working here because, every now and again, the managers walk by. When they ask, hey, how are you doing? Can I help? He goes, he intrinsically knows they mean it, right? Likewise, they'll ask him his opinion on things, and they're making sure they're taken care of. And he said he also worked at another hotel, which I thought was a class move on Simon Sinek's part, not to bring up the name of the one that wasn't. And he goes, they just treat him like a number. He goes, I clock in and I clock out, and I don't do anything extra. Right. And if you're not, I think there's two components to this. One, it's in every employee. I think it's both sides kind of do it. The employer wants everything, right? I saw a job ad, and it was, they want a master's degree preferred, and they were paying $16 an hour. right? It's like, so there's that side where they want everything from you in some cases. And then, hey, through benefits and stuff like that, it's the old Don Draper line from Mad Men. She was saying, you never say thank you. I give you money every 2 weeks. That's thank you. Right. And maybe that worked in the 50s, but not today. The other half of this is employees, they go, hey, what's in it for me? Right. I'm going to make money, but what's in it for me? And I think the kind of the dance when you're hiring people is that, you have to, if you're going to say, we have an open door policy, I want to help you advance, I want you to be highly successful, you have to prove it. Right. And, even I'll take you one step further. So the company that I run, we have a parent company, and periodically folks will show up from the parent company. And I know, like, they'll be in my office and we'll be working, and they'll stand up like they're going to the restroom, and then I won't see them for half an hour. What they're doing is walking around the company to see if, I'm running a prison camp or, an enjoyable place to work. And I welcome that. Right. But it's the original thing you were saying was the CFO CEO argument. What if we spend all this money on these people and they leave? And, what if we don't and they stay? Right. So what's the balance? And I think the balance, the middle of that seesaw that keeps it together is culture.
Right. And one of the things that I told this young man was, and I, and I've done this, many a times, I've hired plenty of people on more than one occasion, because I tell them, look, at a certain point in time, you're going to be ready for more responsibility. And I'm not going to be able to give it to you because we can only grow so fast. And you're likely, coming in as a junior employee, going to outpace what I can give you at a certain point in time. Like, you might be ready to become a manager in 3, 4, 5 years, and you're ready to go, but I already have a manager. So we'll have that conversation. And I'm like, okay, you've been a good employee. I've met all of your expectations. You've met mine. Well, I will open up my LinkedIn network to you, because I want to make sure that you're also getting the next mentor who's going to help you grow to the next stages in your career.
Right.
And I said, there's a selfish point to that. And he's like, oh, what's that? And he goes, because I can tell my colleague, you just only get to borrow this employee because I may have a future need of you. And so you're also going to know that, hey, you've done well. I want you to get this experience because I might not be where I'm at forever. And I may have need of you again. And you're going to know I keep my word. And the people that I want you to go, help you go work for next, they also know the deal, because this wouldn't be the first time they've heard me say it. And it wouldn't be the first time that I've given them employee, but they got the value out of you while you were there as well.
Right.
And they follow the same path, because I said, look, because he asked a good question. Well, then what is a successful career for you? I said that I have dozens of people that worked for me that either opened up their own businesses or made it to the C-suite.
Yeah, totally. It's the folks I have now. That was the number one thing. That was this big flat pool of people, and the founder and guy that I took his place, he was of single mind to accomplish a task, and he was very inexperienced with the business side. Right, he had a vision, he had a dream, he started a company, and he did great things, and probably took it as far as it could with the money he had and things like that. I think that. I inherited an incredible team of folks. And, as we've started to hire new people, that culture fit has been the most important thing, because everybody that we look at is smart. Everybody is talented and engaging at what we want them to do. But you got to show up every day, and you have not to, there's rocking the boat, and then there's purposely drilling holes in the bottom. Right. I want us to test the stability of the boat periodically through open debate and objection to certain things, right? But you can't be counterproductive. One of the folks we recently hired, we still had 2 or 3 candidates left, and all the folks that had talked to that person, that person probably wasn't even halfway home from the interview, and I'm trying to call them to get them to come work here, because everybody came in and goes, that's the person we need right there. We don't have to look any farther. And they were correct. Right. It's what I was leaning to. But unlike you, I don't try to run a benevolent dictatorship.
I don't try.
Exactly. That's where I was driving at.
Look, it's just some people are just called to a certain position in life, TK. I just answered the call.
Your royal eminence.
Yeah.
Do you
I mean,
do you wear the orb and scepter have the orb and scepter most days, or just keep that behind your desk?
no,
for special
doesn't
occasions?
HR doesn't really appreciate it when I bring that out. So I tend to only keep that for special occasions. But just like, because it was only, what is it? So 6 days ago when you were, had your anniversary for Just Cause, right? Was it on December 20th?
Well, they didn't have one this year, but yeah, that's 19th, 20th, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
They have one every 30 years, so I don't think I'll be around for the next one.
I mean, you've made it to, all of these, like you've made it to the, I think you'll be around for the 300th anniversary for the country. I mean, you were there for the first.
I hope so. It's only 60 years away.
Yeah. Anything's possible with modern medicine.
Exactly.
Even it does give us to a little bit of a tangent. I was listening to Lex Friedman interviewing John Danaher, and for those that don't know, Lex is at least I will say he's an MIT guy who specializes in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and John Danaher happens to be arguably the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach walking around today. But he's also a PhD in philosophy, I think, from Columbia University. So he's a big thinker. And so the conversation they were having started getting on this aspect of if someone could build an actual robot, true AI that had no strength advantage, could it beat Gordon Ryan? So great debate. But really what came down to is what they had said is that, look, whenever there's, it was human versus machine, the machine wins every single time at this point. Like it's just, it'll learn the game no matter what game it is. And within, hours to days, it's going to beat whoever the top players are. But what they found that was interesting is whenever there was a combination of human and machine working together, it destroyed both human players, only the human players and only the AI players. And so really getting into that cyborg-like thing. Right. If you could get like the Neuralink and a bunch of other things like that, would you? Would you turn yourself into the $6 billion man instead of the $6 million man?
Well, like I said, I want to live forever. I just don't want to be in a chair drooling on the trophy when I get it. You know what I mean? I want to be running into the gates of wherever I'm going, hey, y'all see that, right? Yeah. So I think it's a quality of life issue, right? And I think when people start talking about aging, they start talking about getting old, right? Because you're going to age. Whether you get old or not is entirely up to you, And I hate to say this, but I grew up in the plastics capital region of the country, but they were back in the 60s and 70s, and friends of mine that have stayed there, they look demonstrably older than I am, right? I mean, because who knows? We've cleaned up the water in the 70s, sure. They did the best they could. Right. And
you were still drinking it in the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, correct. Right. But here's the thing. The street I grew up on was mostly engineers from General Electric or Foster Grant and some of the other plastics companies, but either chemical engineers or predominantly electrical or mechanical engineers. Neighborhood of probably 30 houses. We had 8 instances of pediatric non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the 70s. Most of the treatments and how they decided to kind of advance the treatment or how they take care of it was developed in New England because of neighborhoods like mine. But that's, you're talking 35 houses and 8 kids. That's in math, we say that's statistically relevant, right? And that's an understatement for relevant, right? So what are, I always go back to, what are you putting in your body? And what are you doing to keep your body moving? Right. And as people get older or as people age, those things fall off the table. Right. And, big pharma and just nutraceuticals companies and everybody, they make a lot of money off filling the gaps for what people don't want to have the discipline not to eat or not work out, right? And I'd say, hey, look, if you're feeling tired and your body parts are hurting, take a break. Like, listen to your body, right? I'm not telling you just every day get up and kick yourself in the junk until you tear your rotator cuff or blow out a hip, right? I mean, because I gotta deadlift heavier. No, you don't. You got to deadlift, right? And you've got to do that, and you've got to push yourself, but you've got to be responsible. But I think that's a life skill, right? And creating that discipline that, hey, I know me, right? And here's the thing: don't put crap in your body. And am I saying that's going to work 100% of the time? Absolutely not. It doesn't work 100% of the time with me. It works 95, 99% of the time. Right. And the guys always joke, whenever I buy the guys lunch at work, they always want to get pizza. And I don't eat pizza. I'll eat the toppings. I won't eat the bread. And, they'll get a big salad for me. And it's like a big antipasto salad from Jets.
Hey, it's really good though.
What's that?
And I've never seen a store offer it, but because we've done this carnivore lifestyle for a while now, we do a meatza. So we'll take like a ground beef or ground turkey and get it out really, really, really thin, and then cook that into it. Right, that's right, and then add in your tomato sauce and cheese and whatever topping. So
I'll tell you what, I've had some cauliflower crust and stuff too. And from somebody that loves pizza, none of it's the same. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not the same, but at least I can go, hey, I'm having a meal that's a little bit different. Because I gotta tell you, doing that, whether or not you want to say keto or carnivore or whatever, there's only at a certain point in time you start to go, man, I wouldn't mind a salad, but I gotta tell you, every single time I've gone and had certain, like, there's just a number of vegetables I've found that just do not agree with me. And so I just don't. I feel great on primarily a carnivore like lifestyle.
Meat products and products of meat and byproducts of animals and more stuff.
Yeah, and then my supplements.
I do eat a lot of vegetables.
Yeah, my supplements are all ground up animal organs.
Right.
And if I were to believe my mom's scale, since we're out here on travel, I weighed in when I got here on her scale at 188. I still think I think her scale's a little bit off. I don't think I lost an additional 3 pounds, or maybe my scale at home isn't calibrated as well, because she says, hey, no, when I go to the doctor, I take my scale there and I go until it matches up with what my doctor. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I am at 188. Well, if that were the case, I've lost 32 pounds. So
nice.
I'm actually then in another 3 pounds would be what I weighed when I started at Silent Circle.
Okay, so that was what, 15?
Oh wait, in 2015 I weighed 185.
That's awesome, man.
Then when I did the doctorate program, I gained a bunch. It's like every single weekend.
Because that's what happens.
Yeah, basically. And then
I think people go the other way. I have a buddy of mine I went to high school with. When he's a psychiatrist now, and when he got out of undergrad and started going to med school and everything like that, he lost a lot of weight because he wasn't eating. He wasn't doing anything. He went the opposite route. He was like Skeletor when he got out of med school.
I wish I knew going into that how much being in ketosis actually helps your brain at the same time.
No doubt.
I didn't realize that. I was doing quite a bit of things to naturally simulate Adderall and turn to focus. If I had known, it would have been that. Knowing what I know now, it would have been so much easier to just stay in ketosis during that time, because that is absolutely, in terms of the way the brain functions, it simulates Adderall, and it would have been much easier.
Your brain's two things: it's water and fat.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have adequate of either, you're screwed. It's why when you get hungover, you have brain fog and everything, because you're dehydrated for the most part.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a funny story about my buddy, and this is psychiatry in a nutshell. So we grew up next to each other, and I kind of lost track of him for a little while, and we reconnected on social media, and I was like, hey, how's your mom and dad? It's like, oh, my mom's fine, thing. My dad's got dementia. He can't remember anything like that. And he goes, so what he does every afternoon is he goes and pulls the Bill Murray from Groundhog Day. He's got old episodes of Jeopardy on DVD, and he just or recorded, and he just puts another one in. It could be the same one every day. His dad's not going to know the difference.
Right, right.
Well, now he's answering the questions right when they're coming out. He goes, "My dad thinks I'm a genius for the first time in my life." That's all you need to know about psychiatry.
I was we were watching this movie, just basically, having something on kind of in the background, and it was a movie called Space Cowboys. And so it's a bunch of
You know that movie.
yeah. And so
Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, the
yeah,
guy that played what's his he was a detective in the 70s, and one other dude.
yeah, I don't remember. So the one that's like the, evidently like the ladies' man or whatever, who also has to wear glasses.
Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, Donald
Yeah.
Sutherland. The Clint Eastwood character and the Tommy Lee Jones character, they're getting up trying to, see who can go through the whole lineup of the eye exam faster. And Hulk's got 15, 20 vision, did it in I don't know how many seconds, and then Clint Eastwood character, only 20. So the Donald Sutherland character goes, "Okay, I'll go next." He goes, "I'm only going to read the last 2 lines." And then he's walking back, says to Clint Eastwood, he goes, "I may not be able to see shit, but my brain is amazing."
Exactly. Yeah.
Because there's no way you can see it. He just memorized the last 2 lines from what those two said.
Right. I mean, that's 90% of life is being there, right?
Well, because sometimes it's also kind of gets you to the point of, you may be really smart, but experience beats smart.
Right.
It's a difference of, you may know what to do, but sometimes you need to know when to do it.
Well, it's education and knowledge, right?
Yeah.
That's manifested itself in the SEAL community, and I don't know if this still goes on today. But when I was getting ready to retire 15 years ago, they had started to offer it. Their bonus structure had changed. They would highly incentivize you early on in your career to get past 10 through bonuses. Because largely, once you get past 10, you're like, well, if I stay another 10, then I've got lifetime health insurance, I have all this other stuff, right? And at 10, if you're not having fun in the SEAL community, I'm like, you need to go, because it's not going to get any better the last 10, right? The first 10 are you're having a blast, and then it levels off because now you're a professional at what you do. You're not just learning every day. You're always learning something, but the learning curve's not as steep. So now you've steadied off to where you're helping other people, and you're becoming a leader, right? Well, right after 9/11, or right around 9/11, they were having a lot of senior enlisted guys get out right at 20. And so what they would do is at 19, they would offer you $150,000 to stay for 5 more years to get you to 24. All right. And at some point, depending, whoever was the senior enlisted leader, once you signed at 19, they owned your ass till 24, right? So as more senior you get, you usually have some choice as to what you do, right? And a buddy of mine who's one of my favorite people, everybody thought he had re-enlisted. So we were at this, work event, and the command master came and said, "Hey, I'm going to need you to go to Guam." The guys are re-enlisted for that time primarily to stay where they're at and to keep going back to Afghanistan or Iraq, right? You're not going to we say one day you're here, next day you're Guam. Not to go to Guam for shore duty and be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for no apparent reason. And for those of you that are at Unit 1 and you get mad at me, I don't care. I absolutely don't care. I didn't care when I was on active duty. I don't care now. But for me, I would consider it the ultimate waste of time going out there. I joined for one purpose and one purpose only. That's why I stayed on CDD for 20 years. And I'm not the biggest badass on the planet or anything like that. That's just the path I chose to go. But they would start to use it as a weapon. And, this guy says, "Hey, you got to go to Guam." You're like, "No, I don't." He goes, "Yeah, you do." He goes, "I absolutely don't." And, this is all senior enlisted. There's 150 in this room. And now, because nobody's talking except for these two. And he goes, "Well, what do you mean you're not going to go?" He goes, "You thought I re-enlisted, right?" He goes, "Yeah, you did, right?" He goes, "No." He goes, "You're not even smart enough to keep up with the paperwork. There's no way I'm going to put 5 years of my life into your dumbass hands." Because I wanted to see what you were going to offer me, and then I was going to re-enlist. And so,
and you offered me Guam, so no.
But the reason that they were paying out the $150K is to keep that experience base around. Like at some point, there's so much time and effort, and people say money, but the money's part of it. It's at schools and training and stuff like that. But repeated deployments, time, training, and like that. At some point, you've forgotten more than other people know. It's not that it's the Native American chief model, right? The reason they were the chief because they had gone around the sun more times than anybody else, and they had more experience, right? And that's all. I mean, there's no other there's no other way to describe it. Is at some point you get to the point where, hey, I can learn something from somebody new, but I'm balancing against a lifetime of experience and knowledge. Right.
Yeah.
And if you get to the point where you're senior enough, and I think what happens to a lot of senior leaders is they get to the point where I got all the knowledge, I don't need any new input. Right. And or you get to the point where, and we've both experienced this at the same time, where you get a leadership experience where the leader, any idea that anybody has instantly becomes their intellectual property, and they discount or push anybody away with good ideas, and then people start to vote with their feet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder if as you were talking about in terms of the re-upping. So I happened to be, at my mom's, and here's a nice picture of my grandfather as
That's awesome.
as a lieutenant. This is probably in the 1930s, before World War II. And he was a founding member of the Army Security Agency, which no longer exists. It's actually, I think, now called ISEC, but it was out of Huachuca, and eventually he went to work at the fort and the Pentagon and all this kind of fun stuff.
I can only imagine Fort Huachuca in the 1930s.
Yeah, and not probably not
Dirt
not
farm.
great. Yeah. And so when growing up, I only remember my grandfather getting kind of, I would say, upset, not necessarily at me, but in general, when I asked him about Vietnam. And he was like, this thing should have been over in 3 days. It would have been quite simple, blow up all the bridges. And then they, this was stupid, and they wouldn't send him over. And then when I asked him about Kennedy, because, I knew they were in Texas at the time, he didn't like that one either. But as he was, Desert Storm was occurring, and my grandfather at this time, has Alzheimer's, and, he's like, I need to go to Iraq. All right. And we're like, what? My country needs me. We're at war. I'm going. He retired as a full board colonel. At that time, it was required to have a college education. So he's passed over a couple of times, and eventually said, all right, I'm just retiring. I'm never going to get that star. So I'll just retire and went the civilian route. But I wonder, if, like what you're talking about, the people re-enlisting, if they knew they were going back to the Middle East, would they have then stayed in? Because that's where
most people do. I mean, actually, I'll tell you, I don't know most people. Most people where I used to work were doing it so they could continue to deploy. I mean, once you get past that 25, 26, and you're going to stay till 30 or whatever, you can end up like my bud's roommate, where you're the command master chief for all the special operations in Korea. And he took his family over there. It's in South Korea. They had a blast. It was, kind of thing. I had one of my first command master chief was Rudy, the guy from Survivor. And then Mikey Boynton. He was kind of like my first hero in the community. Old school Vietnam vet, big filthy mouthed Irishman. And he'd forgotten more about life than probably I still know today. And he had spent a lot of time in Vietnam, and he was married to his wife Mary the whole time. And he went and volunteered to be the command master chief of Unit 1. Had never been a West Coast sailor his whole life. Deployed to Vietnam, but always through SEAL Team 2. And it was solely so that he could show her the Orient and kind of give her a flavor for, he's not taking her to Vietnam, obviously, in the 80s, but they walked the Great Wall of China. They did all those things. And I think that for the guys that stay in that long, especially if they've got families they've largely been absent from their whole adult life, I think that's a great time to go, kind of, here's what I've experienced. Right. And it's, we've talked about it before. I had other aspirations outside of doing that. But, I respect the guys that want to stay that long. I mean, for me personally, it was like, hey, if I'd have retired at 30, I'd have been 52 years old and retired for a couple of years. There'd be no way on God's green earth I'd be able to get to where I've gotten to today in that time frame. Right. And it was important to me to, kind of put a Wile E. Coyote on the fence of the command and say, hey, there's something else out here. Right. I've been doing the same thing for 20 years and 14 years at one place, right? For the better part of 14 years. And so I think when people start talking about, hey, how am I going to take the knowledge I have in life and do it and use it for something that I want to do? right? And for 20 years, that's what I wanted to do. But I had guys on, I can't believe you're getting out, right? Like, why? Like, even if you just turn it into a math problem, the math problem for me was I was better off retiring at that time.
Yeah.
But it's funny because, you're still in the ready reserve. When you don't retire, you basically you're put into the fleet reserve. And at some point, if they felt my skills was needed, which I probably would have laughed at them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, all these young guys, you don't need an old man anymore. But when you start talking about your grandfather saying, I want to go back, there's a mechanism to a certain time in a certain age, right?
Right.
But what I find fascinating about the men of your grandfather's era is they just didn't talk about it. Like, they were men. They dealt with their own demons their own way. And, I've told you, I've been at events where there were 5 older gentlemen there, and they were like, hey, you're the SEAL guy, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah. And, knowing all these guys are World War II veteran badasses, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. And they're like, yeah, we didn't do anything cool like you did. I go, what'd you guys do? Well, 3 carrier aviators and 2 gunnery officers on destroyers in the Battle of the Coral Sea, right? Because those guys just stood around and did nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But the funny thing is, when I started asking them what they did, they had been members of this country club for probably 50 years and not once had ever talked about World War II. They didn't know they all fought in the Battle of the Coral Sea together. Right? You can't swing a dead cat at the VFW or at the shopping mall today without knowing some veteran and what he's done and why. And I'm not saying we were right back then what we did, but I think the tipping point for that manifestation and the United States handled it really badly was Vietnam, right? Because everybody came home from World War II and everybody was happy, and there was like an unwritten rule. It was, first rule of Fight Club, And by that time, people wanted recognition for what they had done, right? And in most cases, because people are shallow of thought, that, hey, if you felt the war was unjust and everything, you took it out on a soldier who largely, unlike every war subsequent to that or every military action after that, largely were not volunteers. They were voluntold. They were voluntold, right? And if you don't like the fact that we were in Afghanistan or Iraq and you think, think something adverse of me, okay, I get it. I volunteered. All right, I made a conscious decision to do that. I'm not saying everybody else should do it or anybody else should do it. But I think the reason that it was so divisive, certainly in the 60s, and why your grandfather probably lamented that, is because it was the first, it was the first really unpopular action that the U.S. engaged in, and all the people that felt like they were put upon were actually put upon because they were yanked out of their lives and said, "Hey, go do this."
Yeah, for something that wasn't a war, right? That was, that's the big thing, because we never really declared war, and we still drafted people.
It was a police action, as they say.
Yeah, and we still drafted people for a police action.
Right. We were, as a nation, even from World War II on, we were drafting people all the time. I mean, it was like people you were doing 2 years of compulsory service in the military. I personally think a compulsory military is the absolute worst thing that you can have, right? Because if you take somebody that's extremely smart, right? Which goes back to what we talked about before. If you're great at your job and you're a great human, you can stay. If you're great at your job and you're a bad human, you have to go, because if you're great at your job, you're probably really smart and you're going to be super counterproductive to the people that are less smart than you but more motivated to stay.
Right. Sure.
Right. And so it's what you found in the 50s and 60s from stories that older gentlemen have told me is that, like, in the regular army, you get some kid that he was in the second year of Harvard, and all of a sudden Uncle Sam came and knocked, and he had to delay his life for 2 years. And they were just a nuisance for the entire 2 years they were in the military. And think about 2 years. What are you going to do in 2 years, right? Do I think that as Americans, there should be some measure of service to the country? Absolutely. How we define that, I'm not going to get an argument about that, right? But I think one of the, if you have no ties to who we are as a nation and why, it's easier for you to badmouth it every day of the week. And if you want to badmouth it after you've served, you've at least, whether it was in like a public service corps or in a different branch of government, okay, fine. All right. But it's, I said before, if you don't vote, I don't want to hear you complain.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's just, it's a privilege that so many other people around the world are die for and have died for, and we get it for free. And we F it up every, as a people because of apathy. Right.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know this because one of the reason why I have the photo right now is my mom and my aunt are going through a bunch of different things because we want to display stuff in the distillery that's about
Yeah.
our family that's there.
No, totally. I get that.
So what I don't know, even though I want to do this, but I don't even know if it's appropriate or how to properly do it. But my aunt has my grandfather's dress blue with all of his medals.
Yep.
Is that appropriate to display?
Yeah. Well, yes, is the right answer. And I can give you a lot of examples of ways people have done it differently. In the Navy, we call them shadow boxes a lot of times, and they'll put it together. Somebody else puts it together for you, and it ends up something that you can put on the wall. Like if you look at Rudy's Dress Blues, they're in the
Yep.
museum, and it's just the jacket. It was important to have a jacket. He stayed in 47 years, and you get a stripe on your sleeve for every 4 years. So do the math on that. It went all the way up and almost touched his rank badge on his shoulder, and so. And there's a great picture of a Marine E9 and an Army E9 at some event, SOCOM event, looking at Rudy's sleeve. Like they don't care what he's got on his chest. All they're going is, oh my God, that's it. And they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So it was important to do that. A lot of times you can, and there's a lot of great places around military towns, right? Like if you ever wanted it done, you could send the jacket down here, and I know somebody that would treat it with dignity and respect and make something that you'd be proud to have anywhere on earth and proud to have your grandfather go look at. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll take a section of the coat and they'll leave like the shoulder and part of the sleeve and get it in the box so you can see like the tie and everything like that, and just focus on that, and he'll have his rank there and everything like that. Or you can deconstruct it where you take the medals off in the rank, and if you have his DD-214, and if you don't know how to get that, I can help you get that. And you can kind of go, here was his career, right? And then you can put that on a brass plaque or things like that. If that's something you're really interested in, gather everything up you want to do, and then just mail it to me. And my buddy Jimmy, who's another retired SEAL, he does hashtag or at SEAL Artisan for those of you on Instagram. Shameless plug for somebody that's doing great work. And he's not doing just great work because he's a great artisan. He brings a lot of at-risk kids or kids that didn't know where they were going in life, and gives them a little bit of discipline and teaches them a trade of how to weld, cut, and stuff like that. And but he's a very genuine human being, and there's some great things that we can do, and I'd love to help you with that.
Yeah. Now, also, because I also have the flag from when he was buried. When you display like the flag from something, do you have like the same rules as if you're?
It's a trifold, right? Yeah. There's a box that we can have made to put it in a trifold.
Okay. Now, do you still illuminate it like you would if it was outside?
I think you should.
Okay.
But that's me, and that's easy to do, and it's easy to do now. Yeah. With modern lighting. It's easy to do now where you don't damage the flag.
Yeah, that's the thing with me. And so for those,
if Jimmy gets out, he'll use glass he'll use polarized glass on it and stuff like that, so that the flag will continue to live.
Yeah. He's in, and for those that may care or don't care, but he's in quadrant 3 of the Arlington Cemetery.
Cool.
And it was one of the last of the generation to where their spouse was allowed to be buried with them.
That's awesome.
So
I see that I saw a picture the other day on social that General Powell's headstone has finally been placed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did he choose Arlington, or did his family choose Arlington?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and he didn't choose a big monstrous headstone befitting of a 4-star general and thing. He chose a white one, just like every other dog face that's ever walked the earth.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but that's who he is, right? And that's just, people can argue about his politics and some of the things he did, I think, but as somebody that he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs when I was a junior guy. I didn't feel like any reckless decisions were being made on my behalf by either, in particular, like the first Gulf War, by either him or Schwarzkopf.
Yeah. I always found it interesting that he chose to not run for president. And I know that at least his public reason why was that his wife was ill, and he wasn't going to do that to her after she spent all this time supporting him throughout his career, and he wasn't going to go back and do it again while she was ill.
So I heard an interview. I was driving from DC up to Ann Arbor when, around the time that he had passed, and they were having people on there. And one of the hosts on one of the programs, her dad was a retired colonel, had served on the Joint Chiefs with General Powell. And then the guest was a friend of their family who was also a colonel at the time, who ended up being a general. And they brought that up and said, well, she was ill. He goes, she was sick and tired of him being in the public eye. Right, that she did not want to put up or have him subjected to the stress that it would take. She wanted, so General Powell's his hobby was restoring old Volvos, and she wanted him to get back to that. Which I thought, what a noble goal. It's like, hey, from the age you were 22 till the time you were 60, you said, yeah, you pick me, right? And sometimes you've got to be saved from yourself. And whether it's a friend, a spouse, your children, whatever it is, sometimes you have to be saved from you.
Yeah. Oh, very true. Now I'm gonna get back. You didn't really answer. Would you turn yourself into a cyborg? Would you get the Neuralink, get the bionic legs, and get your back and neck, all fixed? Would you go through all that?
If you're going to tell me I can get my back and neck fixed, I'm in. Get me on the table right now.
Because then you'd be able to walk all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good. I'm doing good now, but I feel it a lot. But yeah, if you're going to tell me that I'm going to walk around pain free and for the rest of my life, and I can do it, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, now would you do version 1?
I wouldn't be a beta tester. I'd do the MVP. I'd be like, I'd do 1.0.
So there is a limit. That is how far.
Yeah, I'm not like, there's some things you just don't want to be the beta version on.
Yeah, I would. I definitely don't want to be the beta version, but I would definitely do something like the Neuralink.
I mean, even now, this goes back to 2008, 2009. One of the guys I worked with, he comes from a very high functioning family. He has 5 brothers. All of them are very high functioning people, either started companies or very high up in company, served their country and everything like that. And one of his brothers was building an exoskeleton. I think he sold it to sold that company to a larger company. And there was that concept to allow a soldier to carry 200, 250 pounds and walk around like they're doing nothing. Right. And how do you get that? How do you do that? And the challenge, even, now going on 12 years ago, 13 years ago, is how do you link what the human wants to do with his body to how this thing moves, and how this exoskeleton at the time would move with him, right? Because that link about what I think and the actions that makes how that makes happen are, what separates a kid who never gets out of high school basketball and a kid that is Michael Jordan. Right, your ability for your body to fire and do what you want it to do when you want it to do it, and in conjunction with some really solid genetics. Right, I was at a basketball game, and I saw one of the dads from one of the boys team. He and I were SEALs together, and I was just asking how his son was doing, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, "Kid's high school sophomore, and he's 6'4", weighs like 185, 200 pounds. He's benching 225, and he goes, man, I think he's got the strong gene like you." Pat had the climber gene, the runner gene, right? And he goes, I think he's got the strong gene like you, right? And so it's, what are your genetics, and will all of this, additive, how we define it, from a Neuralink to whether you get body parts in you that are going to, that when your own wear out, the new ones make you stronger, bigger, better, faster. What are you trying to achieve? Do you want everybody to have the fast gene and the strong gene? Because that is what required. From experience, I think in any team, the hallmark is that everybody doesn't do the same things well.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Well, here's another one for you. Now, we're not entirely sure, but this is either the great grandson of Oliver Wolcott or the great grandson of Oliver Wolcott, which would have been. We're not entirely sure yet, because my uncle is the family historian, and there's nothing written on the back of the photograph. So that's either my great grandfather or great grandfather. We don't know. But anyway, for those who don't know, Oliver Wolcott's the signer of the Declaration of Independence, and comes from my grandmother's side. So I'm trying to grab all the photos for everything. They're going through all the boxes so we can take pictures of it, because eventually on a wall we're going to have like all this stuff intermingled with the.
I think there's two things you need. You have to make that your distillery something of yourself, right? And carries, and then you have to. I'm a big believer in showing where it all began, right? And partly because it's cool for people to see when you're a bootstrap operation and you hail the stone and you were doing this in your bathtub,
right?
But as you get bigger, I think it's a great reminder of where you came from.
Yep.
I think people start making mistakes in life when they forget where they came from, and good and bad, right? If you had a very bad beginning and that's where you came from, how do I not do that again? And if you had a great beginning, you better be thankful for the gifts you were given by your parents and other people to allow you to be better positioned to make great decisions and not have some of the trepidation and trials that other folks have.
Yeah, I can tell you one mistake I wish I didn't make already with this distillery is I found that it's a huge mistake to be dealing with any type of metal and water, because your hands get all nice and soft, and every time you touch that metal, even screwing like basically hoses.
Dan, just stop. You've always had the hands of a dancer, dude.
Manual
labor was not your thing.
Definitely not. So the amount of times I've cut my hands up from it, and they're like, I'm like, gloves. Every time. So now, as soon as I walk into the distillery, I'm like, all right, I'm putting my gloves on. I may not even be touching anything.
Do you have a liege that does that for you? You just put your hands out and they put gloves on you?
Well, no. So it's they're put in such a way, as soon as I walk in, I can just slide my hands right up into them and I put them back down.
But yeah, you're like I love you, brother. And there's a lot of things you telling me that your hands get soft because they were in water. Your hands get soft because they were soft.
Well, they're even softer after being in that water all the time. I'm going.
Babies want your hands. They're so soft.
Yeah, and then the amount of times washing my hands and so then like on the way here, like every single time I would open my hand, every single cut on them would just open back up because they were so dry. I'm like, all right, I need some hand lotion.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Don't let your mitts get out of order.
No, I'm like, I just like, this is not used to this.
Two things,
another
like
manicure.
If your feet are messed up or your hands are messed up, like you want to go make yourself a vodka and soda, you don't realize you got a paper cut until you got to get into the lime piece of that.
Oh yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, when I was messing around with doing some getting into a little bit of woodworking, but with the epoxy resin. And so I got some of the epoxy on my hands. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go grab some acetone. I'm like, whoa, I got some more cuts I didn't know about.
Okay,
so I don't have to worry about them getting disinfected.
I want you to take a couple days off, and I want you to come up to the shop, and I'll have my guys walk you through the 101.
Yeah.
On how to deal with all that.
Up in Ann Arbor?
Yeah.
Not a problem.
No, it'll be fun. But when you said resin and acetone on your hands, I was like, my hands aren't cut up, and I'm still probably not wanting to do that.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to get that. I'm like, because silly me, I should have put on the gloves first. And not the same gloves. In this case, just like the latex gloves, so that way, as the resin gets on there, you just throw them away. I was too busy with my stepson and making sure he had the gloves and trying to help him, because he was making, he made his mom a cutting board / cheese board, and helping him do all of that. I'm like, okay, you got to do this, got to do that, and of course I had made sure he had the latex gloves on. I didn't.
So I went out on the shop floor the other day because we're getting ready to start make a run of drones, multiple drones after the new year. And one of the sets are smaller than an indoor drone. And so we have to cut, the carbon out to make the frame and everything like that. Well, first we have to make the sheet carbon. We were doing it on steel tables and it was good, but it wasn't perfect. And we went out and had some glass tables built. And so I'm going out there to see as they start doing it. And just, again, they put the fiberglass down, they start impregnating the resin in there sheet by sheet. And then, once they get done, they've got to get it all packaged up so they can vacuum it and let it sit in a vacuum for 12, 13 hours. And so it'll come out and be perfect sheet carbon. But you're talking about guys that do this all the time, and they're amazing gifted artisans. But I'm in the middle. I'm just out there watching. It's like 5 o'clock at night. I'm just out there kind of watching the differences between doing it on steel and having to put it in a bag, and then doing it on glass where you take like a big piece of putty. It's a strip putty, and you put it around the outside, and then that creates the vacuum when they suck it down. And one of the guys turns to me. He goes, "Hey, can you take my gloves off?" And he goes, "What they were doing was multiple sets. Like they would put multiple sets of gloves. So you take one set off so they can clean, now they got a clean set when they got to do something else. And so they understand the process, and then they use the amount of gloves on their hands for the process.
Right.
Right. Which, they don't end up with resin all over their hands. I don't see them putting acetone on their hands.
Yeah, I did that because I don't know what else it would take off the epoxy. But they say, acetone takes it off. So I had acetone. I put it on. It was perfectly fine as long as I didn't have those cuts. But I was like waving my hands around, like, "Woo, that burns."
That's funny.
Yeah, but having fun with it. And then when we get back, so I've been thinking like, all right, all these hoses and stuff laying around. This isn't going to be good. This is
to come down there and let my OCD run amok for a day or two. We'll get all that straightened up because it'll flip me the F out if I walk out there and see stuff all over the place.
I'm like, this is gonna work. This is like an accident waiting to happen. So, I'm like, all right, how can I do this to be a little bit more, permanent? So, we're gonna get. I'm gonna start running PVC, by where the sink is, go up, down, and this way at each point, I will have it to where I can either turn on the hot water or the cold water to each of the stills in the mash tun. But
kind of like creating water drops throughout the place.
Yeah, basically. And then, especially from when we are cooling off the still, that there's a permanent at the very end where all of the hot water runoff will go to that down the drain and keep running through, because that's the part where, like with our big column still, it's got 2 points where you have cold water going in, and then of course then that means 2 of the hotter water coming out. So I can get them going into one location. When I was first doing it, I'm like, all right, I got to get this thing up and running, and I'm just doing it with hoses. And I'm like, if there's more than one person here doing this right now, for like me trying to do all this testing and figuring it out, like the people we're going to be fault. It's a small space, but it's not small.
It's a dangerous one.
It's 1,400 square feet, and like everything's right there, and going back and forth. I'm like, all right, it's not too small. Like there's plenty of room for 2 people. And I'm going, we're going to be tripping all over each other. I've got to figure out a better way to keep, almost like
all the tripping hazards off the floor.
I'm basically treating this as if I was, standing up a whole bunch of equipment in a computer rack. So I'm like, all right, how would I be doing this if I was running cable?
Yeah, no doubt. That's a great way to think about it.
I'm going, all right, I want to make sure I've got all of my stuff lines in, things are labeled, and and the misses. I'm like, look, I want to paint the PVC. Like, let's paint it, purple and gold, which is the colors of the brand. She's like, oh, I think that's going to be, hard upkeep. I'm like, why? Like, it's never really going to move. And purple, like, pick it. Purple could be the hot water, right. Gold could be the cold water. But this way, when you're looking at it, that's cold water. That's, that's hot water. And again, that just goes back to, for me at least, even I know people, do these things all the time, but I'm going back when doing stuff in the government, I wanted to know, was I on the high side or the low side?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to make a mistake of doing something on the high side that you should only be doing on the low side. And
get a government-wide APB that you were the guy that compromised crypto that day. I got to go to a new segment.
Yeah, like I always want to know. And this is the same thing I tell my engineers. Like when I'm
here's the thing: if you make that mistake in the guy, you're gonna know.
Oh yeah,
a phone call within like 3 minutes from our friends at the fort going, "Hey, dude, what's going on?"
Yeah. And it's the same thing I tell my engineers. Like, all right, they've got their VMs, and so they've got replicas of production. I'm like, okay, it may be a replica, but you could have the GPO in your development environment make all of the backgrounds, a different color. Like this way, there's no mistake
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not right. I'm not going to allow anyone in audit to write us up on the difference that, oh, well, you have a blue background versus a red background. No, not happening. That's the way in which you know,
Yeah.
and you don't hear the mistakes of, oh, I thought I was in the test environment.
That goes back to the old days when they'd buy you 3 computers but 1 monitor, and if you weren't switching the right KVM box, all of a sudden you're sending emails out to the wrong people at the wrong time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, so I want everything visually, looking at it. Hey, that's the cold water, that's the hot water.
Yeah, no doubt. You don't have to paint the whole. Depending on what paint you get, sometimes you have to rough up the PVC quite a bit. You have to do quite a bit of sanding to get it to adhere correctly, and then literally alcohol. Everything. There's a lot of work to be done, but if you get wide purple tape.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just do the duct tape.
You tape the ends where, here's where the nozzle is. I'm going to tape the end so I can look at it. Or they do have these stickers that on one of them they say HOT and on the other one they say COLD. Yeah. You probably can go with those too.
Yeah, but I was trying to keep it in the theme of the.
No, I got it. I'm all about it. I'm just joking.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll just get tape and just put, like you're saying, just that way visually. I'm like, all right, because I don't, once those pipes are coming down close to the stills, I want to know which one I'm hooking up. Like, am I cleaning?
Hey, here's the thing. I'll send you the website for it if you would like. Get yourself get a set of purple vinyl and a set of gold vinyl, and I'll use my vinyl cutter to cut it for you.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Now wait, well, trust me, those whatever you want to put stickers on for the rest of your life, you're gonna have a roll of vinyl to do one either way. and we can cut letters up to 24 inches.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The guys wanted the 48-inch one, and I was like, "Give me one time we're ever going to do the 48-inch letter."
48. I mean, on a drone at that point, like you're talking about, drone exactly. Huge.
Yeah,
huge.
On the side of a 747. No.
Yeah.
It's like no.
You mean you're not going to have a drone as big of a 747?
No. I tell you, one of the coolest things we just got was we got a stranded carbon 3D printer. Mm-hmm. And one of the pieces that helps to latch one of the booms onto the wings, not only by replacing those 2 aviation grade aluminum pieces with carbon, are we going to save 550 grams? The cost went from being $24 a part down to $488 a part.
It's pretty significant.
Yeah, and this machine's badass. The next one up, which is. It's funny because it's the next one up, but it's orders of magnitude more expensive. And these guys, what about this one? I watched the video of some guy made a crank arm that was 48 inches long, all one solid piece of stranded carbon that was 3D printed. He's holding up like a big dog bone, like a big cattle bone, that's like that size, like the cattle femur, and it's like, that's why I got to watch the video. And it was literally one piece, one segment of stranded carbon that just went out. I think it was like something like 800 layers or something like that. But it was, I mean, it's amazing stuff that you can do. And yeah, we were getting ready to have a bunch. How we got the vinyl cutter, we were getting ready to have a bunch of vinyl cut for us, so the facility was going to make it for us. And the quote came back, and it was like $480. And I went online, or I had the guys go online, and I said, let me see how much a vinyl cutter costs. And the one that we got is about $400. I'm like, so no, those guys aren't going to bend us over the table for a bunch of letters. And so now as we build, I mean, obviously branding is hugely important for us. So anything we do, we want to get the brand on it, and the easiest way for us to do it is the vinyl cutter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
but all right, you got to bring yourself up to Ann Arbor, and
not a problem. Yeah, not a problem at all. After the new year, for sure.
You can hang out with all the artisans for a day and get all your functional woodworking / carbon fiber knowledge together.
Yeah, well, the missus loves Ann Arbor, so it won't be. I won't have to. And then all the friends from my MBA program are basically living at the Ann Arbor area, so it won't be a challenge.
When you come up there, do you stay at the residence?
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, it's right across the parking lot from where I live.
Perfect.
Works out.
Yep, even better. Can go right over to Vinology.
There you go. I had great short rib there the other night.
It's
short rib. They're doing Camus by the glass now.
Whew.
Yeah.
What are they charging? What are they charging for the glass? About 22?
I can't remember. I mean, it wasn't when I looked at whatever it was. I didn't go No. But now they're doing it where they're not even taking the cork off of that. They have a press that they go through, their needle press they go through there. They can pour it that way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah. No, they're good.
Awesome. Well, my friend, I got to get running. Happy belated Christmas to everyone out there, and
have a great week with your family. And then we'll chat. When we said
New Year's Eve. So I don't know. On Friday at noon, we're going to do our 2022 predictions.
All right, very cool.
So we'll have a full house. Are we bringing
the immaculate Professor Pittman?
Yep. So the ninja will actually be on site with me. RB Ravi will be with us.
Nice.
And one of my classmates is supposed to be on from Michigan.
Okay, cool.
I think that's it. So there'll be 5 of us on doing some predictions. We'll see what happens.
There we go. All right, everybody. Have a great week.
All right. Take care.
Yep. Bye.